So I just wanted to go over what the best PvP builds are. These are all going to be relevant for PvE as well. There's probably 4 best builds that I'll show you, and I'll mention a few others as well. The game is still fairly new and it's not absolutely clear which is the best build, so hopefully by the end of it you have a good idea of maybe what you want to play and some of the builds you might come up against. Now I don't have access to Ravenquest at the moment, so I'm just in Raven Dawn, which I don't have access. I'm only level 10, but essentially you're doing these venture board quests and they give you Aether Rift passes, and I think you need to be legacy level 30 potentially to get access to the Aether Rift. The Aether Rifts, you're going to be entering PvE PvP scenario with one other player. You can do a 2v2, but I've only done the 1v1, and you're going to get access to a max build. So right now you've only got your build 1, so these will be I think they're called like Aether Rift builds or something. Be able to build out a max build. Alright, we'll go over what I think the best builds are, and then I'll show you a couple of my Aether Rift battles. If you didn't know, your class is dictated by the 3 archetypes you select. In this particular case, it's Hex Warden, which is a combination of protection, witchcraft, and wizardry. As far as I can tell from some tournaments I saw, probably the best build in the 1v1 PvP scenario. The game is still really new, and I beat this build in the Rift and I've seen it lose, so still really early days to kind of say exactly what the best build is, but the meta definitely seems to be having some kind of healing and a bit of tankiness. So you'll see a pattern here, all these builds have protection in it. Now I'll link this website down below. This isn't the exact skill points that you would select. I'll show you a bit of a dodgy screenshot here that you can screenshot and you can copy that if you want, but I'll use this website just to go over a few things. So you can see from that screenshot you're mostly using witchcraft, so pretty much all the passives from witchcraft. You're getting cooldown reduction, basically increased damage over time, some healing, and in protection you're increasing your health by 10% and guardian as well. But suggest divine purpose is also pretty good as well, because you're going to be receiving a lot of healing and therefore increasing your defensive power. This one's not too bad as well. You get a big defensive proc at below 20% HP. Looks like you're mostly grinding down your opponent with witchcraft. You're still having some damage from wizardry and keeping yourself tanky with protection. In terms of the Raven cards, you can only select 2 Raven cards. You only have 2 options for each ability anyway, so I assume they're going to be pretty intuitive when you're selecting. You may not even have access to both cards, so just select which card for each skill you have, and generally it'll be pretty obvious which one you want to go with. What I would suggest, if any of them have any anti-healing, that's probably pretty good because healing tends to be the meta at the moment. Okay, so this next build is going to be Runesmith, very similar to the Hex Warden, except instead of wizardry you're getting spiritual. So as you can imagine, spiritual is going to be more healing, and this is going to be even more of a sustained tanky build. I should say for both these builds, it seems like you're using a one-hand scepter or mace and a shield. Equipment and everything's equalized in the Aether Rift anyway, so you don't have to worry too much about your gear. Again, I'll show you a screenshot of the actual skill points you'll put in. This probably isn't what you would use, although it is close. The screenshot's very dodgy, but it's all I could find, and yeah, you could screenshot that yourself and copy that. So in spiritual, you're just getting this cooldown reduction, and I think you get cooldown reduction as well in witchcraft. Yeah, you do. And then you're also getting increased healing effectiveness, and then these 3. Increased health, and we went through these ones before as well in protection. And then in witchcraft you're getting everything other than this one. Just another note with the anti-healing, anti-mana is also a big deal. I've seen a lot of these fights go down to whoever runs out of mana first, especially in a mirror matchup. So Siphon's going to be important, that drains mana, and just a couple of others, they heal over time, or your damage heals you over time. More damage when you're below 50% HP is huge as well. Okay, the third build I want to highlight is Fighter. Now, I used a similar build in my Aether Rift, so I'll go over it in a moment. I think it's called Shadow Stalker. Similar to this, except instead of protection, I went Shadow. But I do think protection is better than Shadow. Fighter, a little bit better than Shadow Stalker. But it's going to be archery, warfare, and then protection, or either shadow. You are going to use a bow for this one, so you're mostly going to be using your archery abilities. I would take precision shot and viper arrow. I'd also take spirit ranger. I don't know why this person hasn't. Dragon arrow, not too bad, and dawn arrow also pretty good as well. And then with warfare, definitely going to take these 2 passives. So this is healing and healing, basically with your damage. Shield break is really good, and I'd also take fisher, which is a stun. They're going to be the main ones you're using from warfare. Get in melee, you could use a heal here. Don't often use that. Bull rush isn't bad either. It's like a charge. Some of the passives here, your attacks targets with 80% HP or 20% more damage. And then in shadow, there's actually one that deal 20% more damage if they're below 50% HP. So that's what I would grab in shadow, as well as the snare in shadow. It's pretty much all I was grabbing from shadow. One of the abilities you would use from protection is going to be this heal. I think it's the largest heal in the game, or maybe not, but this is it's just a solid heal. The Blessed Earth, I think a lot of people use. Spirit Shield increases your defense also, but it does decrease your attack power. So you would use this when you see them maybe using a big ability like Spirit Ranger or one of the mage charge up kind of channels, dropping a big fireball or something on you. Okay, let's jump into some of these rift fights. This is the build I was talking about that I'm using, Shadow Striker, so I've got Shadow instead of Protection. You can see it there, you can see all the passives I used. A little note there with the stat points, you're still going mostly into whatever your main primary attribute is, so in my case Might. You still want some Vitality. The soft cap for Vitality is 260, and you can see my weapon power there is highlighted in orange. That means I've gone over the soft cap. So potentially I could have gone maybe less in Might and gone more towards hitting that soft cap with Vitality, and I probably would have gone more Impact than Precision. Didn't know Precision is crit chance, Impact is crit chance, crit bonus damage. So I'd say there's 3 or 4 key points to winning these Aether Rift battles, and the reason they're important to win, I should say, is because you get a good amount of experience for winning these, and you get a lot of silver as well. You also have a chance at a Aether Scroll, which I'll show you later. This gives you a entrance into a boss fight that requires a group, but I'll run through that later. The first key to winning, as we've kind of already gone through, is picking a good build, obviously. The second key, which you can see in this footage, is catching your opponent while they're still attacking or being attacked by some of the PvE mobs. Obviously you don't want to use your cooldowns on the mobs, you want to stay relatively healthy, and you want to kind of kite them backwards so you don't have any chance to be caught off guard by your opponent, and you obviously want to catch your opponent off guard. If they've lost a little bit of HP, maybe used a few cooldowns, wasting time hitting the PvE mobs, that's going to be a huge advantage, and you pretty much, well, I found I won 100% of the case in those scenarios. The third thing to be aware of is your Aether. So you probably, if you've played already by now, you know that your abilities use or get like an extra effect, either more damage or just more of what they do from using Aether, that purple bar. In the case of the Shadow Stalker that I'm using, I know that I want to use my Shield Breaker and Viper Arrow early because they both will use all my Aether. And then I can cycle through either Wind Arrows to build that back up or my Spirit Ranger. I do use that early because I know I do extra damage if they're above 80% HP. So I use that, hopefully get them down below 50%, and that also is where my bonus damage gets triggered as well from Shadow. That Spirit Ranger will build my Aether back up a bit, and then I can use either Precision Shot or Quick Arrow and kind of start cycling through my abilities again. You might also want to be aware of abilities that don't necessarily utilize your Aether that well. So in my case, later on in the fight, I could probably use Shield Breaker again without any Aether, as well as some of my stuns like the Rupture or maybe the charge that I get from Warfare, or any snares, CCs, things like that. It's probably not the best use of Aether. It'd be more your damaging abilities. So I'm pretty sure with each build, including Witchcraft and Wizardry, there is that one ability like Spirit Ranger that does a lot of damage and doesn't use any Aether. It actually generates Aether. So those are obviously going to be important to use at 0 Aether. And lastly, if you have your protection in your build, want to obviously use your defensive abilities when your opponent looks like they're using their big damage dealers. So if you're versing a Ranger or a Fighter, use them when they're using their Spirit Arrow. And against Wizardry and Witchcraft, I believe they can pop their R, so their ultimate ability, and then use something like a Pyroblast that does a huge amount of damage. So maybe at that point, if you can somehow notice when they're doing that, that's when you would use your defensive abilities. Watch out for rogues. If you've come up against any rogues, there's an evasion ability that they have where single target abilities and auto attacks don't do anything, I believe, but AoE abilities do. So if I'm coming up against a rogue and I notice they pop that invis or evasion, I'm using my rain arrows because I'd be wasting my other abilities by using them at that point. So there is those little things that as you play more you'll start to pick up on, but at a base level, summarize, catch them off guard, don't be caught off guard, and have just an okay idea of what your cycle of abilities are going to be. And then the next level would be popping defensive abilities and timing your own abilities depending on what they're using. Real quick, if you haven't signed up for the game yet, there is a referral link down below. We both get a bonus from that. So just use that link to register, and the rest is self-explanatory. Alright, just one more bit of information you may not know about. The other reason these Aether Rifts are so important is because when you win, if you win, you have a chance of getting a Aether Scroll. It's you'll see it, you'll know when you get it. It's pretty obvious, but it's a scroll that allows you to do an Aether boss, and I'll show you an Aether boss fight now. These give good silver and good experience as well. Leveling up faster, these are going to be important, or a nice bonus, and you do need at least 2 people to do these, and you can pick the difficulty when you do it. You can see the fight now. I managed to get in with really good players, so these were all straightforward, and we had at least 4 people. It almost feels like you could 2-man it on easy. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but it does feel like that. But if you ever need someone to do these ETH bosses with, hit me up on Discord. My name is just Web3 Gaming TV, Twitter, or in the comment section of these videos. I'll be happy to help you out. But make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.